I'm Bernice van Bronckhorst. I'm the task team leader for the Bangladesh Repatriation and Livelihood Restoration Project. And I'm working in the South Asia Urban Water and Disaster Risk Management Unit for the World Bank. Libya has around an estimated 2.5 million foreign workers actually working in Libya. Libya has been very rich in oil, so that has attracted many foreign workers, just like you find in many other countries in the Middle East and North Africa. And many of those workers come from South Asia. So the case in Libya is that actually one of the largest groups of single country foreign workers are from Bangladesh. So there's an estimate that there were probably between 70 and 80,000 Bangladeshi migrant workers based in Libya at the onset of the current conflict in Libya. Most of these are workers coming from poor backgrounds in Bangladesh. Many of them had gone into considerable debt to go out to Libya. Many of them spent up to $3,000 plus just to get these jobs overseas in the Middle East and North Africa that they take many years to repay. Most of them also work in construction or semi-skilled workers. So these are not sort of terribly well-off people that were there in the first place. Following the onset of the conflict, particularly in the early weeks, there was an exodus of many thousands of migrant workers leaving Libya, not just from Bangladesh, but from many other countries as well, particularly also from Egypt and Tunisia, from Chad, from other countries that have many workers in Libya there. But an estimated, of the estimated 70 to 80,000 Bangladeshi workers, around 30,000 moved out, fled after the onset of violence. And then there's been an additional trickle of people coming out. So another 3,000 to 4,000 Bangladeshi workers have come out in the last couple of months. Of those, I would say now up to 30,000 have been repatriated with the aid of IOM, the International Organization for Migration, back to Bangladesh. And an additional 3,000 to 4,000 have been repatriated back to Bangladesh, either through their employers in some cases or through the national carrier, Biman, who's also been involved in repatriating Bangladeshi workers from Libya. Most of them were in camps in both Egypt and Tunisia, and mostly, originally in Tunisia because that's closer to Tripoli, so that's where many of them ended up. We received a request from the government of Bangladesh to help finance the repatriation of the workers. Originally, there was a real humanitarian situation developing very fast in the camps at the border areas where there was very serious overcrowding. Traditionally, these types of situations are handled by the international community. There's a very good system in place. UNHCR, International Federation of the Red Cross, and some other NGOs tend to do all the work on the ground. They manage the medicines, the medical side, food, etc., setting up the camps. And then IOM, the International Organization for Migration, traditionally and has a lot of experience of doing repatriations in this kind of situation. So normally what happens is that they will issue an appeal to the donors, a flash appeal for resources, which was done in this case. Both UNHCR and IOM issued an appeal. Total resources, the updated appeal that were estimated to be needed for all the refugees leaving Libya, not just the Bangladeshi ones, but the global number, is actually around $160 million estimated by the IOM, of which they actually received less than half. So this is where the government of Bangladesh were asked to step in to also help finance some of the costs associated with the airlift and of repatriating all these stranded migrant workers. And that led to the government of Bangladesh approaching the World Bank to see if there was some IDA funding available to help them with those incurred costs. The second issue was that we were asked to do everything that we could to ensure that repatriations didn't stop, that we could continue the flow of repatriation. So that what we agreed with internal management in the World Bank and with the government of Bangladesh is that we would do retroactive financing of this IDA credit from February 28th onwards, which was the first date that these repatriation flights started repatriating the migrant workers. So that all of these workers could keep being repatriated based on the knowledge that the World Bank would come in and help the government with this financing. Then the second component of the financing that the government approaches for was really to try and help these migrant workers that have lost jobs and have been supporting their families in the initial months after they return to meet their basic needs and to help them commence livelihood restoration after that. The project has two main components. The first component is really just we're paying for a share of the costs of the airfare of moving 30,000 Bangladeshi migrant workers from the Middle East or from North Africa back to Bangladesh. And that's really to repay IOM for costs that they have already incurred through chartered flights that they have had to charter, or through regular scheduled airlines that they have booked seats on to repatriate these workers. The second component, which is actually the larger component, almost 2/3 of the total IDA credit, is for a conditional cash transfer. So each migrant worker is entitled to a one-time cash grant after they arrive back in Bangladesh. And this is really to help them meet their basic needs for the first few months after they get back, and not just themselves but also their families that are dependent on these, since they have lost their jobs, and many of them have lost they may have back wages that weren't paid in Libya because they had to flee because of the conflict. So this is really to help them get back on their feet as quickly as possible.